Hello, my name is John Ward. I'm the author and publisher of a website about current affairs called The Slog, which builds itself as a website for cognitive dissidents, which is the best description I've yet come up with. Here's tonight's fireside chat topic. Fireside, you see here in the background there. Time check there. Very good. Now, here's the topic. Who runs your country? Do you know? And should you care? I think you should. What I propose to do tonight is present you some simple facts to suggest why that would be a very good idea for you to worry about it. It's basically simple maths to demonstrate that whether a piece of news is fake or not is not really anywhere near being the totality of the problem with our mainstream media. The problem is that the mainstream media doesn't investigate the lies behind even the genuine news anymore. Here's an example. Today, the American CNBC website issued a press, what do you call it, release, article, whatever it is, but it was an article anyway, a post. It is devoid of spin. I have to say, in terms of its content, it's devoid of spin, and it's entirely accurate. And it says as follows. It says, J.P. Morgan earnings crush analysts' estimates as bond trading revenue surges by nearly 90%. Lots of crushing and surging going on. Isn't that wonderful? Bond trading revenues surged 86% to $3.4 billion, CNBC further gushed, exceeding the $2.61 billion estimate by roughly $800 million as fixed income desks were humming, particularly in securitized products and rates. So they're cooking on gas, aren't they, over there? Well, as I've already pointed out, the story is absolutely true. And you might think that makes me a chump. For only 2 days ago, at the Slog, I wrote, I'll be a tad interested in J.P. Morgan Chase's results, if only to see if there are any columns in the results flysheet headed plugging iceberg hole on starboard side. Excuse me. But CNBC is doing what all old media, especially corporate inclined media, do these days. And that is to never assess the facts behind the news. The New York Fed Reserve has parachuted $6 trillion onto Wall Street since late September 2019. Almost all of it into the repo loan sector that allowed J.P. Morgan to crush analysts and surge and hum in the way that such organizations, I am told, do. They did this because J.P. Morgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon, became nervous about some of his borrowers and caused a rate spike in the repo sector by saying no a few times. And this caused a liquidity problem, and this forced the New York Fed to begin a money airlift and get the taxpayer to pay for Jamie's nervous condition to the tune of $6 trillion. The renewed energy on the repo thus allowed Dimon to calm down to the tune of $800 million profit. As a result, our Jamie himself is now worth a further 250 million bucks. One rate spike, one bank, one man, $6 trillion. 1/3, in fact, on top of the entire US national debt. This is money that means every American citizen from 18 months to 118 years of age now owes $17,142.52 more than they did last September. So I have 3 grand nurses over there in San Francisco, and they're down for $50,000 as well. And none of them has reached the age of 12 yet. Except that the US money tree isn't quite that, shall we say, level playing field, because differing levels of income and taxation come into play. Somebody with a taxable income of $1 million, for example, annually, now owes $123,000 more. Every single one of them. A less lucky person, on a mere $100,000 a year, is snip cops for $52,000 in debt. So you see, this isn't a socialist, not fair on the workers, Max Keiser sort of jive. It's about, in fact, over 90% of Americans. There's very few people in the bottom 30% of the US have any savings at all over $15,000. 85% of Americans have less than $10,000 stashed away, and 34% have diddly squat. The question is somewhat academic. The real question being begged by this calumny is the same old chestnut that's been bothering the decent folks for several decades. Who really calls the shots in America? On the evidence of the repo scandal alone, if you believe that politicians and the president do, then it's you, Mr. and Mrs. Johnny Conspiranoid. That's the nut job. Sorry, it's not the rest of us. Now bear with me while I try and apply similar maths and logic to the deal negotiated by the British alternative state to take the United Kingdom out of the European unelected state on January the 31st next. There may not be a money tree, but there just has to be a paper mill involved in this somewhere. Or rather, an electronically created boundless sum of silly money as per the exacting principles of the fractional reserve central banking and UK Treasury accounting systems. If there isn't, then on February the 1st, 2020, the newly independent UK's budgets will have been completely shot to pieces. So far, questions by finance workers, bloggers and MPs have gone nowhere in terms of getting a confirmation from anyone in government anywhere about whether there have been any changes at all between the May, Theresa May that is, and Bojo withdrawal agreements from the EU. The tight-lipped nature of the response to this question would suggest that either A, there are further nasties in the Bojo version, or B, much more likely, there are no substantive differences at all. In fact, although Boris claimed a victory in getting the original WA reopened, no such thing appears to have happened beyond the removal of the EU backstop in Northern Ireland, which has been replaced by a Northern Ireland Protocol. Do you know what that is? No, I don't either. This means that there is a financial dimension to the leaving deal, roughly as outlined by the slog 3 months ago. Firstly, there are the European Investment Bank costs and liabilities. Chancellor Hammond gifted £7.5 billion to the EU. Nobody knows why. He just did. He had a surreal sense of humour at times, which I don't share. He put Britain on the line for another 36 billion of capital. help for the EIB with no preconditions at all to help underwrite any form of Eurozone collapse. A further £80 billion per annum will be down to us to underwrite any cock-ups the EIB produces in lending during the transition period, even though we have already left. I mean, this is how bonkers it is. Total EIB limited liabilities, therefore, as a result of the leave on January 31st deal amount to, on that basis, £124 billion. There are then the monthly extension payments still in force as a result of the Ramonoid MPs blocking our exit last March. By the time we leave, these will have cost £10 billion. A mere triviality, a mere snip. Finally, there is the ludicrous divorce fee of £39 billion. It has no legal standing at all under the Treaty of Lisbon and has never been explained. To this day, nobody in Westminster or Brussels anywhere has given anyone else anywhere else a fraction, a scintilla, or even a glimmer of a reason why we are paying this ridiculous sum of money. We know, of course, why the EUB is demanding it, because they are a bunch of feral mobsters. But either way, it seems like we're going to cough up unless we leave without a trade deal on December 31st. So, largely thanks to Whitehall idiots and Remainoid ideologues, the cost of Brexit plus a trade deal at the end of 2020 will have reached a rather less than trivial sum of £173 billion. Now this is, of course, chicken feed in the Jamie Dimon League of Laughter Making, but nevertheless what we Mandarins call an NHS and what 1950s born SBA victims would call due restitution for criminal embezzlement has been blown away purely for the sake of leaving the EU. Now, given the state of our national finances, there is no way that money can simply be found. It will have to be either taxed, created, or borrowed, depending on whose population stats you believe. I'm being kind here and using the census data. Getting the Brexit plus trade deal will have cost every UK citizen £2,650. Every last one of us has paid that just to have our democratic decision recognised and acted upon. It comes on top of, I hasten to add, the £624 billion we pay in tax every year to keep these lunatics doing this. 3/5 of £1 trillion every year. £1.2 trillion since 2016 just to have them needlessly cost us another fifth of £1 trillion. These, the legislators and civil servants, whose salaries, unfunded pension liabilities, and incontinent vanity project write-offs have added nearly £3 trillion to our debt since 1995. Now, this system may be working for sore loser fascist minorities, corporations doing dodgy tax deals, frontal lobe depraved bankers, arrogant Sir Humphreys, MPs in the city, but it isn't doing a lot for some 80 or more % of the electorate, or indeed the viability of our currency, sterling. So a similar question ought to be posed by Brits as to that posed to Yanks. Who really calls the shots in Britain? I can't speak for the US, But although a resident of France, I'm still a UK citizen from birth. A slog threader recently, I should say, suggested that my beat of the street may be off, given I only visit Britain occasionally these days. It's a fair point, although it is also true that a non-resident making rare visits is vastly more conscious of decline than the unfortunate British lobsters being slowly boiled alive every day. But this issue isn't beat of the street stuff. It's not about what people at UK Brown Level think at the moment about their opinions. It's about collating the evidence to show what is rather than what people imagine the situation to be. On the basis of that evidence, I would suggest that the Borisonian cabinet badly needs a regulator on a number of key issues. Otherwise, we're all going to be taken for a ride over the next 5 years, as we have been over the last 100 or more. And there is no need for the past to be a guide to the future in all matters. Whatever the relativists say, this regulation job used to be done by the news media. Today, we are overwhelmed with shopfront news, but nobody is looking under the counter in the mainstream media. Today, that job is largely being performed by online investigations undertaken by individuals, small collectives like Wall Street on Parade, and the bigger fish like Zero Hedge, Spiked, Off Guardian, and so forth. I can only tell others involved in the task what my investigative priorities are in the UK and Europe of the moment, and it's these: keeping Boris the Spider in check, instilling some global fiscal urgency into the Chancellor, Sajid Javid, revealing the real state of Eurozone liquidity and economics, waking people up to the somewhat dubious reality behind the boy king Macron in France, getting to the truth about UK liabilities to the European Investment Bank, further revelations about Guy Verhofstadt and his chums, demanding more details about the UK-EU trade topics and progress, and unearthing anything that will see 1950s-born UK SPA reform victim pensioners reimbursed. In the immediate term, and I really don't give a damn if people are bored with the subject, we badly need much more openness about our withdrawal agreement liabilities and the trade deal with the EU, the topics, the personnel, the goals, the progress, and whatever. So thank you for being patient with my monologue there. If you want to stay informed about your fate, go to Google search and type in John Ward the Slog. It will normally come up first, second, and occasionally, if they are muddle-headed, third. There you will find more stuff of the nature that I've been describing tonight. And in the meantime, I leave you, whatever time it is in your space, to enjoy whatever meal it is you're about to have next. And thank you again very much for listening. Good night.